Billy. Here. Councilmember Rita Swope. Here. Vice Mayor Glenn Gunn.
Here.
Mayor Joseph Manzo.
Here.
City Manager Lynn Reeves.
Here.
City Attorney Fred Riley.
Here.
Okay. First item of business is to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, I'm not going to know who made the motion, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The agenda is approved. We now move to citizen comments. The way we're going to do this is the way we typically do it, a 3-minute time for each person. The vice mayor will select the audience member, the citizens who are in the audience who wish to speak. Please, when you're called, I'm not sure where the podium is right now, but please come up to that podium. Please speak into that microphone so that Abenaki and myself or remote can hear you, and then it goes on the record. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the vice mayor.
Do we have any citizens who'd like to make a comment on any item not on the agenda this evening? Mr. Hanson?
I'm John Hanzik, 103 22nd Street. I would like to congratulate the City Council on finally passing what you call a traffic calming ordinance. It took a year, but it's done. I've reviewed it online, and my takeaway, if I may use the term, is take an act of Congress for it to be effective if residents want to do something. I counted the houses on my street between Gulf and Bayshore. Half of them are vacant either because of snowbirds, or one is vacant because it's been vacant forever, if you will. And one's a rental property, so I don't know how that would qualify for getting the percentage. So 50% of the houses on my block aren't full-time residents. So if I wanted to submit something to the council or to the city, it would be almost insurmountable for me to do any changes if I saw the need to. But I just wanted to congratulate you on finally getting a traffic calming policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? No other comments from the citizens, Mayor?
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. So with that, I'm not sure if the sheriff is present. Item number 3 would be the presentation of the sheriff's report for the month of April. Is the sheriff present?
Yes.
Okay, can the sheriff please come forward and make the presentation then?
Good afternoon, I'm Sergeant Papa Michael with Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. I know that many of you were emailed from our Strategic Planning Bureau the City of Bel Air Beach monthly crime stat analysis. So I'm just going to go through page by page. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. If you compare March and April of 2020 with March and April of 2019 year-to-date stats, you'll see that they're, for the most part, consistent. We had 2 larcenies in April of 2020 as compared to 14 last year. There was 1 forcible sex offense, which ended up being unfounded for the most part. As far as arrests go, for the month of April, we arrested 4 people. 2 of those were felonies, possession of controlled substance, 1 domestic related battery, and 1 driving under the influence. So far, The May stats have not come in yet, but we've gotten 3 DUIs. 2 of them were traffic crash related. So I know I was present on one right here at the causeway where it meets the roadway. So there were 3 different DUIs for the day. The sheriff's office responded to 734 events in the city, 868 total responding units. So the difference between the two is approximately 150, where 2 deputies had responded for a call for service that was something out of the ordinary or potentially dangerous. If you look at the deputy activities for the month of April, we have 318 direct patrols. Currently, I looked at the module before I came in. I believe the city itself has 11 active direct patrols going on at one time. Deputy Ocasio works in the city of Bel Air every night, and he tries to address all 11 of them if it's feasible. And we'll look down the list itself and see all the variety of different types of cases that we responded to in the city. Going back to crashes and citations. Any questions from anything so far? Currently, there are no intelligence that policing in regards to anything of any dangerous nature in the city. If there were, I'd bring it to your attention. And what we can determine normal calls for duty and responses from the sheriff's office. But we are here to help you. If you need anything, always feel free to ask. We are a service-oriented agency, so we are here to assist you with whatever problems you have. Anything? All right, thank you very much.
Everything seemed to be concluded.
Yes.
Okay, I can barely hear that. I'm not sure about Robin Hockey. I did have a question, and I want to open up if there's any other questions. Glenda, let me take them. I had a question for the sheriff because when we got the March statement, the year-to-dates were 0 for all crimes, murder, forcible sex, robbery, assault, all that. It's all 0. Now we had apparently 3 incidents in the month of April, and 3 plus 0 does not equal 11 for year-to-date. So I don't know if there was a revision in March, and if so, I don't remember seeing it, or if we just had a total error here with the year-to-date for April, but it showed 11 crimes year-to-date, and we showed 3 in the month of April, so I don't know. I'm not quite sure how they come up with that number.
Yeah, I show according to my strategic planning bulletin that there were 3 total between March and April. 0'd out for the entire month of March and then 3 for April. The 11 shows April, 2020, so we're talking 6 larcenies, 3 burglaries, and 1 aggravated assault. So I do not have the information currently on what specifically those crimes were.
I didn't hear that. I don't know what he said, but all I know is even take forcible sex offenses. If we had one in April, it's not even moving over into April year-to-date. So again, I don't know. The March one that I have here has 0 for year-to-date on all categories. 0. We've had 0. In fact, the ongoing thing is I think we had 6 months running where we had 0 crime going back to like November of last year. And I know this thing recycles come January. We started the new tallies. But since January, we haven't had anything. It's been 0 every single month, as I recall. And now it's showing higher numbers here, so.
Yeah, I think this is incorrect. This
The year-to-date numbers.
the strategic planning bulletin here, I do not think it's actually accurate. Because you're right, if it shows 11 on one category and 3 on the other, there's obviously a discrepancy there, so I'm gonna have to research who put this together and what their numbers were for it. But you're correct, sir.
Thank you. If we get it, if you'll forward to the city manager, he can pass it out to us, and we'll see what the totals are. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor, does anyone else have questions on council or in the audience?
Do you have any questions from the residents or council members of the sheriff's office? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay safe out there.
Thank you, sir.
This is a special honor tonight. We're basically celebrating the certification of Kyle in floodplain management. This is a professional certification. It's no easy task. It requires a lot of hours. It's very technically oriented and a very arduous course. Lynn Reeves can probably attest to the small percentage of people who pass this test on the first go-around, and based on hard study, a lot of hard work, and the tutelage of our city manager, Kyle passed it on the first go-around. So congratulations to Kyle. It's always great to invest in our people, and he's done a great job in return. We look forward to getting a lot of rewards for this. So, thank you very much, Kyle. Good job.
Congratulations, Kyle. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Items 6 through 9 are the consent agenda. I'm going to just read it by title only. We'll pass the entire consent agenda with a motion and a second. We have a proclamation for number 6, honoring the 100th birthday of the League of Women Voters, that honors the League's commitment to community education and the facilitation of election candidate nights. As many of us know, they actually do candidates night here for Bel Air Beach, so this is to honor them on their anniversary. Item 7 is the approval of the April 27, 2020 special city council meeting minutes. Item 8 is the approval of the May 4, 2020 city council meeting minutes. And item 9 is to authorize city manager Reeves to dispose of excess obsolete property. It was attached there, and it appears that he's going to recycle that. So do I have a motion for the consent agenda to pass items 6 through 9 inclusive?
Mayor, Vice Mayor here. Just a point of order. I think we might have skipped over item 5, the public hearing portion. Consideration of ordinance 2020-01.
Okay, I crossed that out. Let's go back, okay? Unless you want to take the consent agenda out of order since I just read it. Does anybody mind?
No objections on this one.
Then hey, let's get the motion to pass the consent agenda, and I'm going to jump back to number 5. Motion to pass it. Anyone?
So moved.
Second.
And a second? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Item 6 through 9 consent agenda passed unanimously. Vice Mayor, thank you for pointing out I did skip number 5, and it's extremely important. So number 5 is a public hearing. I will read it by title. It is the consideration of ordinance 2020-01. It's an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, providing for the amendment of section 2-248B of the City Code of Ordinances relating to administrative fines, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for a copy to be kept on file, providing for severability, providing for the repeal of all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date. This is the second reading. It passed unanimously last time. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And do we have a second?
Second.
I didn't hear it. Do we have a second? Yes, and who made the motion?
Vice Mayor.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Vice Mayor, I'll turn it over to you, actually, for comments. We'll go up and down council, and then most importantly, we'll take it to the citizens if anyone wishes to comment on this. And then we will vote if we pass it tonight, and this becomes a final ordinance. Vice Mayor?
Council members, any discussion or debate? No debate or discussion from the council. Residents, any comments or discussion? No comments from the residents. I turn it back over to the mayor for the vote.
Thank you very much. I'll read it again. Consideration of ordinance 2020-01, an ordinance of the City Council for the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, providing for the amendment of section 2-248B of the City Code of Ordinances relating to administrative fines, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for a copy to be kept on file, providing for severability, providing for the repeal of all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date. Second reading. This is to pass it. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Bean.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley.
Aye.
Councilmember Swope.
Aye.
Councilmember Aki.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ben,
Aye.
Mayor Manda.
Aye, so it passes 7-0. This is now an ordinance. I will sign it tomorrow. I'm sure this packet will be brought to me. And city manager, this is, I know you had worked hard to get this, and we now have this information and go forward, and hopefully it will aid in the enforcement of the code here for particularly short-term rentals. Okay, with consent agenda being passed, item 6 through 9, we now move on to item 10, which is the irregular agenda. We have a presentation of the stormwater utility study by Stantec and Brian Miller Olive, and that was put on by City Manager Reeves. This is all in regards to the stormwater utility study. After that, we're going to do the first reading of the ordinance. So item 10 is up right now, and we show the representative of Stantec. Stantec, just so you know, the individuals, your slides were already provided to the council, Robin Aki, myself, and I think everyone else. So we have them in front of us, we'll be able to see them if you just tell us where to flip to. So with that, please.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Westover with Stantec, and it is not June 1st, 2019, as the cover of our presentation says, so just wanted to point that out to start with. Happy to be
I can't hear that. I don't know about Robin Aki. I can't hear any of this. They have to get closer to the microphone if they could.
It could be the mask, feel it, see. Is that better, Mayor?
A little better, yes, thank you.
Okay. Good evening. Kelly Westover with Stantec, and I'm pleased to be a member of the team this evening to bring to you the stormwater utility rate study. We are on a team with Brian Miller and Olive, which Mr. Chris Rowe here as well is with us. On my team this evening, I have Kyle Stevens and another member of our team, Dave Hyder, who's not able to be here this evening. But we're the primary core team from Stantec that have been working on the study. These are the 4 main project objectives. I'm going to turn it over to Kyle Stevens, who's going to lead us through each of these 4 elements, as well as cover some of the technical components. Mr. Chris Rowe is going to cover some of the ordinance considerations that you have this evening, and then we'd like to open it up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. So what we did is 3 distinct components, and what I'd like you to think of these as distinct investigations that are linked to one another as we go through the study. And so the first component is the financial plan. And in the simplest terms, what we're concerned with here is the annual revenue requirements, or the amount of money we need in each and every year to run a sustainable stormwater utility within the city of Bel Air Beach. We did a cash flow model that essentially projects this out for the next 10 years to understand the sustainability dynamics related to the O&M, personal services, as well as capital investment. And then the next component takes that amount of money we need, and we figure out how best to measure each and every parcel's unique dynamics and the way that it relates to providing stormwater services. So this is the fee design. This is where the rubber meets the road, and we come up with fees that are actually charged to parcels. And then the last component I'll go through quickly are the customer impacts. We will talk about the different customer classes and the different fees that would be levied. So with regards to the financial plan, we integrated with city staff and went through a number of iterations to identify out of the city's budget for fiscal year 21 what components of the city's expenditures would make up stormwater operations. And they broadly fall in a number of categories. And so you've got city personnel that are involved in going out on site. You've got operations and maintenance, so things like street sweeping would fall into that. Additionally, you have some loan payments, which is part of our bond validation process we need to do typically when we start up a utility to ensure that it's legally defensible. And then the largest part you'll notice on that pie to the right is the capital investments. And so these are the larger investments that are made in the system to take that stormwater off of typically private property and transmit it to the receiving bodies of water, typically in this case the intercoastal waterway. In total, it's about $613,000 in fiscal year 21. Now we put that in our model, we looked at a number of different ways to fund that. What we're presenting you today is a model that essentially takes 29% of that, roughly $176,000, carves that off and places that on a stormwater fee. The remainder of that revenue requirement would still be coming from the general fund. And This is a very common type of setup when you stand up a stormwater utility. Typically, you can't take them to 100% cost recovery right out of the door. It's usually a transitionary period where these utilities are set up, and then typically over time, when it's correct, that fee can increase, or not the fee, but the percentage of full cost recovery. This panel right here is just a screenshot of our financial model, and I just wanted to walk you through a couple of things on there particularly. And so what this shows is once that fee is in place, it would provide for sustainable revenues for a number of years. What I've indicated up at the top is, potentially what we'd like to see is in the future at some point, when the timing's right, that you have some inflationary level potentially of increases. I've shown this going from 25 forward. And all that does is when you have a fee, much like water or sewer, you don't want to go too long before you adjust it, otherwise you have a really big gap. And so I've shown in this financial model 3% as an inflationary increase. And what this would do is essentially balance the cash flows between the expenditures coming out of the fund and the cash coming into the fund. And on my very bottom chart there, this would allow the city to fully execute the CIP that's been adopted for the next 5 years and into the future. Now, with regards to fee design, if we move to the next component, what we first need to do is select a stormwater fee basis. And in the simplest terms, what we're talking about here is essentially what's the yardstick or unit of measurement we're going to apply to a property to determine its stormwater contribution potential. And so I've listed a number of these off to the left, starting with taxable value, dwelling units, gross area, impervious area, and impervious area. And you notice I have an arrow there that runs from the top to the bottom, and we typically think about this as increasing in equity with regards to how close these units of measurement are to the stormwater potential contributions of a parcel. So you can imagine taxable value is not necessarily a big connection between the value of a property and how much stormwater could run off. But if we think of something like impervious area, what I mean by that is really hard surfaces. That is a big driver of stormwater going into the municipal system. For an example, the image off to the right there shows a property pre-development and post-development. The big change in those two images are the impervious surfaces. So these are the roofs, the patio pavers, the driveways. When we look at a precipitation event that hits those two types of surfaces, what you'll see is essentially when it's pervious undisturbed land, there's a runoff coefficient of about 0.2. That means that when a gallon hits there, only 20% of it goes off. The rest of it is percolated into the ground. Now, where if it hits impervious surface, there's a much larger percentage of that that runs off of the parcel that then the municipal stormwater system would have to handle. And so impervious area is considered kind of the gold standard when you talk about measurements of parcels and their potential stormwater generation. It's pretty easy for people typically to understand. If you pave it, you pay for it, and the dynamics related to that. The other consideration that we thought about with the study is legal defensibility. And impervious area, by far, has the most history in the legal system and has been upheld multiple times. And so hydrologically, legally, it is the most sound and considered the gold standard for measuring a parcel's contributions. Now, what we did with that then is I grabbed a data set from the most current property appraisers' taxable rolls to gather the attributes of parcels that are within your service area, as well as the characteristics on those parcels. So the Pinellas County property appraiser, while they're mostly concerned with the value of properties and taxing those properties, they do grab in their database a number of characteristics that would make up an impervious area. So there's broadly two data sets. One is the base area, kind of everything under your roof, but they also record things like patios in the backyard and pavers. And so we can take that off-the-shelf data and essentially create a footprint of impervious area for each and every parcel. And this is what we've done in this study in order to determine the differences in parcels and how we might group those into customer classes. And so I've given you an example right here, and I've just highlighted it, and I know it's small up on these screens, so I'll talk through it. This is a couple properties within your service area. I've just noted in the coloring the different elements that were included in the Pinellas County property appraiser that were then added up to become the impervious area for these parcels that we could then measure and determine how much total impervious area you have, as well as the individual footprints. And so, as I mentioned before, things that are typically under roof, as well as patios, any kind of structure that's on the parcel that's an additional feature, gets added into this database, and that gives us our complete database that we can now use for fee structure analysis. So with regards to customer classes, your particular service area is pretty straightforward. When we look at the different parcels that are present here, there really comes down to, for stormwater fee purposes, two individual ones. So you have a number of single-family homes, that's the vast majority of your service area, and then condos. And when we analyze these two different parcels, they look unique. So you couldn't charge everyone one flat fee. That wouldn't be equitable. So because they have such different developmental characteristics. And I'll show you in a minute what some of them look like. But on the bottom to the right, there's just a distribution of your single-family homes. They are very similar to one another. So when you look at one to the next, they'll have similar developmental characteristics. The average impervious area is very similar. So for this purpose and the purpose of this study, we've created two customer classes. One would be the condos, and one would be single-family homes. Now, when we looked at that revenue requirement, we divided the average impervious area by single-family home. What this would show is that a monthly fee of $15 on a single-family home would generate the needed revenue of $176,000 on an annual basis in FY21. To give you an idea of what that looks like in the pure municipal sense, we've created this survey right here that looks at other communities that have stormwater fees in place, and the average fee for single-family homes. What you can see here is it averages roughly around $10 or so. Your fee is a little bit on the right over here to $15. The one thing to note here when we do fee comparisons is it's not apples to apples commonly. You don't know the different funding characteristics that go into each of these different communities, and each of them are in a different part of their stormwater life cycle and the maturity of their stormwater utility. And so just a caveat. The other thing is, you're a little bit unique. You're on a barrier island. A lot of the peers around here are not necessarily so water-facing, and that can come with some unique service delivery costs that you have to incur because of that. With regards to the condo calculation, the way that we developed that particular fee off to the left, I put just a visualization of this. What we did is essentially took all the impervious area that we measured for the condos. We divided that by the number of units that were present on condos. And what this allows us to do is create a mechanism where we can create one fee for the entire service area, but have an easily understandable ratio that allows us to size the fee for these individual condo properties. And the reason we go through that is because each of them could be a bit unique in their size and their relative impervious area that is the measurement that we're looking at for stormwater potential. And so I mentioned off to the right there, the single family home, the average we found was about 4,100 square feet of impervious area. When we do the division for condo units, it's about 1,572. So what that tells us is it's roughly 40% of a single family home. So if the $15 was applied to single family homes, what we could then do is apply a $6 fee per condo in order to size that fee properly to each and every condo that you have in your service area on total. So what does this look like? The next slide here, what I've done is I put the number of units for those parcels in the condo class to the left, the fee for $6 in the middle, and off to the right would be the monthly fee that would be sized based on the number of units times the number of condos and the unit fee per condo to give us a monthly fee for those individual properties. And you'll notice it's a bit higher than single family, and that's because when you look at them from an overhead view, their impervious area in multiple cases is much larger than a single family home. So this fee mechanism recognizes that. Chris, I'll turn it over to you for the ordinance.
Thank you, Kyle. I'm Chris Rowe with the law firm Bryant Miller Olive, and a stormwater utility is typically established by adoption of an ordinance. That's what you have before you this evening, an ordinance which would establish a stormwater utility and also a stormwater utility fee. As Kyle's outlined, the fee structure is basically $15 per month for each equivalent residential unit. By definition, as outlined in the ordinance, each single-family residential property is 1 ERU. Condominium will be 0.4 ERU with the $6 per month. So this ordinance, it approves the fee structure that's used initially. It contemplates that this fee structure will be in place at least through the current fiscal year and then next fiscal year. It describes the basis for calculating the fees Kyle just outlined. It establishes the stormwater utility as an enterprise fund. Basically what that means is all revenue generated from the stormwater fee must be used for purposes of stormwater management. It's not the type of fee that some additional revenue could be derived from and used for other purposes besides stormwater. All of the stormwater revenues from the fee will be devoted to stormwater management purposes. The ordinance also provides for billing and collection. The city does not have its own billing system, rather it utilizes the billing system set forth by the county when the county bills for water and wastewater services. The city uses the county's billing system for its solid waste charges. The county has expressed the willingness to likewise collect the stormwater fee on the city's behalf and include it on the monthly utility bill that goes out to customers throughout the city. The ordinance authorizes other means of funding. It provides that the funding can be derived from any number of sources, including the stormwater fee, other legally available revenues of the city, grants if they're available. It also provides that the city can issue bonds or notes or other forms of debt if it wants to borrow money with which to undertake a particular improvement project, and then repay that borrowing over time through proceeds of the stormwater fee. It also provides that individual areas can be set up within the city. If there's a project that's primarily benefiting a given neighborhood, you can set up a devoted charge just for that neighborhood in the future if you should wish to do so. The ordinance provides for annual administration. I tried to make the annual administration process as streamlined and simple as possible. Basically, what the process involves is you taking a look each year during your budget deliberations and determining whether or not you need to increase the amount of the charge per month. It automatically allows you to do a indexed increase from year to year. And the index is the 5-year average of personal income growth in Florida. This is a common metric or index used to adjust other local government fees. Basically, it comes in somewhere around 3.5% to 4% a year. So ordinance provides is that your fee can go up by that amount, 3.5% to 4% each year, without going through an extensive process to renew or increase the charge. If the city determines in its budget deliberations that it would like to generate more revenue from the fee than you're allowed to do under the base revenue structure, then you can do so, but you do that by resolution, and come back and do a resolution. And if it exceeds that personal income growth index, then you'll have to provide notice to your customers in the stormwater system that you're getting ready to consider the increase and give them an opportunity to come in and be heard with respect to the change. And that notice can happen different ways. One, you could send out a stumper in the utility bill that's mailed each month or periodically by the county. You can post notice on the city's website. You can publish notice as well. So if the council is inclined to move forward, then this evening you would give direction that the rate structure as it's been outlined is satisfactory. You would undertake first reading of the ordinance, and within the next week or so you provide that notice that I described. Again, it can be done a couple different ways. It can be done with the city's website. One thing I've suggested to the city manager, a cost-effective way of ensuring widespread notice is through a postcard or a dedicated mailer that would go out, and like I say, within the next week or so to all customers in the utility system, informing them that the city will consider second reading and adoption of the fee next month being established, and that they will have an opportunity to come in and be heard prior to that. June 29th, you could do a special meeting for second reading of the fee ordinance and adoption of a resolution providing for a capital purchase. Kyle mentioned bond validation. Bond validation is a technique by which a city, which is about to borrow money for a capital improvement project, can ask the circuit court to review the fee, review the project, review all of the legality that went into devising the fee in the first place, and enter an order basically confirming the city's ability to impose that charge and use it for its intended purpose. When you undertake validation, you're basically proactively seeking judicial approval for the charge so that no one who may be opposed to the charge in the future can come back and challenge you. If the court rules in your favor that yes, this fee is within your lawful authority, you can use it to repay a loan, to finance a capital purchase, the way you've gone about calculating it is legal, then that ruling by the court will basically preclude challenges in the future. So you'll have good peace of mind, you'll be on sound legal footing, knowing you won't face a challenge in this fee in the future should someone disagree with the way it's calculated or just want the fee. Sometime by July 3rd, I anticipate being able to file the validation complaint for the capital financing. By July 31st, you would enter into your agreement with the county in order to have the county collect the charge for you through its monthly or bi-weekly billing process. And then the validation proceeding would be wrapped up. You could begin fee collection and, actually obtain a loan for the small capital purchase necessary to support the validation sometime in September, October. These are tentative dates. They're not fixed in stone, they're not statutorily required. This is just an outline of potential dates as I estimate that basically experiencing these types of fees going through the validation process. And with that, I think we're happy to take any questions that the council or the public may have.
I have a question for you. You made a comment that they could borrow against that money. When they borrow against that money, is that only for stormwater fixes, or can they borrow for anything?
No, ma'am, it's only for stormwater purposes.
That's very clear.
Just a second, Eileen and Mr. Hanson. Let's get through the council first, and then I'll come out to the citizens and residents. Is that okay? Council members? I've got a couple of questions. Kyle, we can go back to your slide, the stormwater fee survey, for just a second. That's it. When I first saw that slide, at first blush, it's like, wow, we're really out there on the end. But just like you discussed, it's not apples and oranges. And the question is, how do you normalize that sort of thing to show where we really are? I don't know if you went through that or not. I went into 2 different websites and pulled up some stats for some of the cities. And when I look at the generated revenues based on the median number of households in these cities that you are actually using there, and I look at the median household income levels, I kind of normalize against those things. And what I see is, instead of being all the way on the right side of that chart, if you look at the amount of revenue being generated, we are on the very left of that chart. Okay, when you consider the amount of revenues being generated based on that fee and the number of households, the median number of households within that city. And then if you compare those rates to the median home income, what you find is we are basically right in the middle of that chart. So I don't know if you have the ability, mine's just like a layperson going in there and trying to normalize this thing. You may have some more eloquent and robust way of looking at that. But my takeaway from it was, we are not on the far right side of it. Right? Yes, monthly payment wise, but when you compare it to our demographics and the median household income, we're pretty much right in the middle of it. Of course, that's an issue for us because when you consider the number of residents in our community, you look at the amount of revenue being generated by the stormwater, we are far on the left. And that's why we need to go ahead and kind of normalize this stuff, understand it. Mr. Chris Rowe was very instrumental in us being able to move forward on the undergrounding. And I'm assuming that everything you're talking about is basically the same level of standard so far as equal benefit and equitable apportionment of this thing. Is that correct when it comes to the validation?
Yes, sir, that is correct. In fact, as Kyle outlined, the system of allocating the cost among the benefited properties can vary at local discretion. You try to find the most equitable system you possibly can, that being a somewhat subjective determination. But with the stormwater fee, the industry standard, the standard that the system used almost virtually across the board, all governments have standard stormwater charges, is impervious area, which is exactly what the system is.
And just one last item, I'd like to go ahead and stress, this is targeted only for stormwater. That's the only thing it can be used for. It allows us to reprogram other reserve monies to address other issues. But so far as these fees, they can only be used for stormwater issues. And secondly, it's a level playing field. It's not based on the property value. It's based on an equitable thing where how much stormwater how much runoff are you creating? So equitable throughout the entire city of Myrtle Beach. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Thank you very much. No more council discussion? Residents? Eileen Woodside?
Hello, my name is Eileen Woodside. I have a question regarding the past history. Now, if we start out with $15 a month, oh,
Thanks, Eileen.
sorry. I have two questions. If we start out with $15 a month, what has been the average increase every year for the past 10 years, say, on the ongoing cost of the operation? And the second thing, if I heard you correctly, I heard that it was, this fee is partly based on an average income of 3 or 4% increase every year of the income of the residents. And I'm puzzled by that because we have so many older people who have restricted or limited earned income. So are we talking about investment income? So there are the two aspects I'd like to know about that. What kind of increases should we expect over the years?
The increases can vary from year to year. It may be that there is no increase from year to year, or that the rate actually comes down. The rate that's adopted for the next fiscal year following the decision will be up to the city council. They'll make that determination each year when they look at their budget, the projects they have coming up, the cost of running a stormwater utility. So it may be no increase from one year to another. The fee is set up so that it has an annual increase that's allowed, not necessarily mandated, but it's allowed, by which the council can increase the fee slightly from year to year without going through a full notice and public hearing process. And that increase tends to be, the way I've indexed it, is up 3 or 4% a year. So instead of $15 this year, it would go up by 3 or 4%, 40 or maybe 50 cents from one year to another. The index that I've used is the average growth in Florida personal income. That is a statistic that is publicly available and made available by the Florida Office of Economic Opportunity. It's a statistic they post every year on their website, or write to them and ask them to provide it. And they will say, for the rolling 5-year average, this year the average growth is 4%, 4.2%, 3.8%. That is basically a cap on how much it can go up from year to year, unless City Council makes a determination to go up more than that. If they want to go up more than that, they have to provide notice to all their customers and give them an opportunity to come into a public hearing and voice their objection or their support of the increase. So it's not a question of the income of the citizens of the city, it's the income of all wage earners statewide. It's the Florida personal income growth, the average of the last 5 years.
Just as a follow-up, city manager, do you foresee a point in time, and we can't hold you to it, where we cross the curve, where this thing becomes sustainable, we've caught up on some of the infrastructure backlog, and we're keeping up, and we could entertain the possibility of a rate rollback?
Right. The whole system is to kind of get us established right now, moving forward to help us with, because if you look at the one graph that they showed with the capital projects, those are the capital projects for the next few years. Next graph is 12th and 13th Street. So we've got some major stormwater projects moving forward, and this will help subsidize that, it moving forward a little further. I think our projected reserve rate is about, in the current situation, is about 4 years away. This, it would move it out probably more than like 6 years away. And, at that point in time, we'll have some other revenue that we'll be able to take into the general fund, is the building loan will be there. So I think long term, it's probably going to end up the other way instead of increasing. It's just, I'm sure, 7 years old.
No crystal ball.
And can I state too, don't forget that this is just, I mean, our stormwater plan, these repairs are upwards of $4 million. And we are only looking at recovering a fee of 29%. I mean, we're not even scratching the surface of what all these repairs are. This is really just maintenance. So that may be ongoing, but the repairs, we can't, we're not, that still comes out of the capital improvement fund.
Once again,
Patty? Let's use this.
Ron Sagana, 2219 Donato. I commend City Council for taking this action and looking at this as part of the Financial Advisory Committee that I participated in. We identified this would be a strength to our city. We see that the city needs this with our infrastructure. We wouldn't be able to go issue a bond for at least 3 years. We need to get this money on a consistent basis coming in. And then if there was a need to do something bigger in the long term towards that $4 million number. But right now the city's conservatively leveraged. We've got the bond to continue to pay off. And I think this is a great balance to the budget to cover the needed storm water repairs that are needed, the capital improvements that are needed. So commend City Council for working on this project.
Mr. Hanson.
John Hanson, 103 22nd Street. I echo what Ron just said. I too was a member of the Finance Committee and we studied all of this. And I know that the city has discussed this for a very long time. So I concur that we need to go forward with this, but it does pose a question that I thought was answered previously in council meetings and also in the final budget meeting. This does not preclude the fact that if the city approves the stormwater fee, and it's not a contribution, it is a fee, we would still possibly budget from ad valorem taxes. Am I correct? For a period of time?
I'll defer to the city manager.
Yeah, we will still be subsidizing the stormwater plan. Right now, the number is 29%, I believe, but we're still going to be subsidizing.
Yes, Julie pointed out, this is just scratching the surface.
No, I understand. But I believe we did see at some point in the future that we would not have to be considering ad valorem taxes per se, because some of this stormwater fee money would actually be going towards not just maintenance, but actually, hopefully, at some point, expediting the replacement of aging stormwater infrastructure. There might possibly come a point in time, the stormwater fee would be all we would need for maintenance going forward. Maybe not in my lifetime, but
I think
somebody's.
that's the hope. I think that's our hope. Is that
Yes, I concur. So I just wanted to clarify that we would still have to use ad valorem taxes going forward if council approves the fee. Thank you.
And it's also the trickle-down effect. While these fees are only applied to stormwater, it does allow us what we would ordinarily use under reserve funds to address street paving, street lights. Well, now we can reprogram some of those monies to other high-priority infrastructure issues. Any other comments from the residents? Back to the council, any council members? Mayor, back to you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and thank you, presenters from Stantec and Ryan Miller. This is an excellent report and very well prepared, and thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, we're going to move then on to item 11. This is our first, it doesn't say it on the agenda, but it is the first reading of the consideration of ordinance 2020-03. It's an ordinance of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, relating to stormwater for fiscal year 2020 through 21, providing that the rate schedule for fiscal years thereafter may be established by the resolution of the City Council adopted during the city's annual budget process, directing codification of this ordinance, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date. This was raised by City Manager Reeves. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I think that was Vice Mayor and Mark B. With that, I will open it, we'll do it like we did before. I'll turn it over to you, Vice Mayor, for comments from the council. Work through that, and let's see if there's citizen comments. This is on the ordinance itself. Vice Mayor?
Okay, so what we've done is we went through the report, we asked questions from the council members and from the residents. Now we're back to the process for getting this ordinance up and running. So I'll open it up to the council for any further discussion or debate.
I would like to go ahead and say something. He had stated that, since this is the first reading, that he mentioned sending out postcards or something to our community to get their feedback. Are we going to do that? In what manner? Because I want to make sure we hear from the community on this as a whole.
We're going to do the postcard. In addition to, we have to advertise in the paper. We'll put it on the website, but we'll send the postcard. The second reading is established that day.
Essentially, the second reading is a public hearing.
Yes.
Is that what we're talking about? Maybe Addis?
Yes, although I feel that there may be a few people in Bel Air Beach that would be against this, I think there's no question that we do have a problem with stormwater. It's something we've been discussing for a long time, and we've gotten behind. That's it, plain and simple. It's going to take some time to catch up. This is going to help with that. It's not going to solve the problem, but it will definitely help get us closer to that goal. And if we actually reach that goal where all projects are done and everything's caught up, this will at least give us the opportunity to have funds to maintain our gutters, to take care of drainage or drain pipes that are just regular maintenance items. I think it's a no-brainer. We're surrounded by water. We are a very unique city, and personally, I think that the $15 is fully justified.
I think everybody saw the slide up there, our fee structure, $15 on the right side, starting at the Newport Richie 336. The bottom line there is there's 12 other cities already doing this, and it's time for us to get smart and join the 1990s when it comes to financing our infrastructure and maintaining a sustainable way of improvement and just maintaining our infrastructure. I'll open it up to residents. Any comments or further discussion from the residents? No comments from the residents. Back to the council. Any less debate or discussion? Marvin?
The only thing I have to say is too bad the city didn't put this in place about 50 years ago. It's deferred maintenance. It's a shame it wasn't done a long time ago. We probably wouldn't have to build this high to start off with. But like the city manager says, hopefully it'll level out after a few years and the cost may go down a little. But this will surely help out the budget.
Hats off to the city manager. You cracked a lot of the code on this stuff with the undergrounding stuff because a lot of the methodology is the same, and that's it. Chris Rowe has been instrumental in all of this. So he's on board helping us out. City manager has the playbook, so we expect a lot of future endeavors kind of along the same playbook. Any last minute? Back to you, Mayor. Go ahead.
I had a comment.
Okay.
I just want to say, when I first heard of stormwater fee, I believe Councilwoman Shirley had raised it at one of our meetings or work sessions, and my first inclination was to say, well, here we go, another fee, and basically another tax, something that I really don't like doing. But the more I've become familiar with
to the mayor for the vote.
Okay, we're ready for vote. Madam Clerk, let me read the ordinance here. Again, it's a long one, so everybody bear with me, and then we will place it to a roll call vote. So we are voting on consideration of ordinance, first reading of consideration of ordinance 2020-03, an ordinance of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, relating to stormwater management, establishing a stormwater utility pursuant to Chapter 166, Florida statutes, and Section 403.0893 Florida statutes, providing for stormwater fee, specifying the methods for calculating, billing, and collecting the fee, establishing a rate schedule for the stormwater fee through fiscal year 2020 through 21, and providing that the rate schedule for fiscal years thereafter may be established by resolution of the City Council adopted during the city's annual budget process, directing codification of this ordinance, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date. With that, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dean.
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis.
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley.
Aye.
Councilmember Swope.
Aye.
Councilmember Aki. Vice Mayor Gunn.
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Aye. So the first reading, this ordinance passes 7-0. Now we will go out with the public advertisement as was explained before, postcards, other publication, and then we'll be back and set another date for the second and final reading to adopt. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item 12 now, related to this. And it's authorize the city manager to execute an engagement for validation of the stormwater fee, also brought up by City Manager Reeves. And this is an authorization to execute an agreement not to exceed $10,000. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
And we have a second. Okay. Vice Mayor, I'll have you do it again, if you would take us through this. And I don't know if we want to have Manager Reeves first explain this, but that's what we've been typically doing, if that's necessary, before we start with the comment.
City manager.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is the fee for the validation I discussed with you in February, that we would come back at a later time after we got the stormwater. And this is a very important component of it. We will take to a judge, and Chris Rowe will do this work for us. And having been through it in the underground process, I think it was a good thing. And we will have to go out and, as he mentioned, take out a small loan. And we're thinking of using something like $25,000 to $30,000 for the
City Manager, can you please speak directly into the mic?
for the check valves. So that would be something that we would be using for the stormwater project, so we don't take out a big loan. It's just to get us through the validation process. So tonight I'm asking you for approval to execute the agreement with Bryant Miller Olive to move forward.
Council, any further discussion or debate? Residents? Any questions, further questions, discussion, debate? Back to council one more time. Back to the mayor for the vote.
Thank you. Let me call the question here. This is to authorize the city manager to execute an engagement for validation of the stormwater fee. This is not to exceed $10,000 on that agreement. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dean.
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis.
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley.
Aye.
Councilmember Swope. Councilmember Aki. Vice Mayor Gunn.
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Aye, and so this passes 7-0. City manager, you're authorized to execute the engagement and amount not to exceed $10,000 for the validation of the stormwater fee.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item 13, which is the consideration of the resolution 20-02. It's a resolution of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, pertaining to the creation of an ad hoc committee pursuant to the provisions of 2 they can participate, and then it comes back to council. So now I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so item one of the discussion of this agenda item is, if you've looked at the draft charter for this group, a number of members, like one initially, the initial discussions when we first undertook this was for a total membership of 5, 1 council member, 4 residents, and then it was left blank because there was some discussion and questions about that. So how was it conducted discussion for the council members?
Well, I mean, I've got a ballot in front of me with 7 people that would like to participate, and I'm of the position to let all 7 participate. If they want to participate and have ideas that they can bring, I don't think that's too large of a group. I mean, we should consider that.
I agree with Councilmember Sherrill 100%. I think all 7 members should go in here. I mean, it's not too large of a group. Some of the other committees and stuff have been this large, so I mean, this kind of number, so I think we're good. I am.
Glenn, I would agree. Glenn, I would also sit on the discussion. The input will work well with the other ad hoc committees we formed. And why not?
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, I'm having a hard time hearing people because they're not speaking into the mic. You've got to like be an inch away from the mic or we can't hear you on the phone.
The inputs from several council members at this point is to allow all the applicants onto the committee. I will defer to Dave Gaddis because he's on the committee basically, and he had some issues, and I just want to go ahead and hear his inputs on this, so far as span of control and managing him.
You know, I'm looking at this list, and I was afraid it was going to be 12 people, which would be non-productive. I'm perfectly
I
fine
can't hear
with
Glenn Morris. Please speak into the mic. I can hear Glenn Gunn clearly, so whatever Glenn is doing, please follow him.
Can you hear me, Mayor?
Perfect.
Great. I have no problem working with this group of 6 people.
Is that a consensus? Residents, any questions or discussion, debate? No questions from the residents, back to the council one more time. The consensus is to accept all the applicants then, and we have the list. Charlotte DeMolay, Tony Gatliff, Kathleen Kleisler, Leslie Notaro, Robert Reesberg, and Michael Zabel. Is that the opinion of the council?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor, back to you for the vote.
Okay. I'm going to have to ask Patty Gentry on this, because typically, Patty, the way a vote is done is that you have to obtain. We can't just say everybody will slide it on. We typically have to go through the vote mechanism by ballot to make sure you get at least 4 votes. That's, I believe, what's called for. But I'm going to defer to you if there's another way of doing it, because there seems to be pretty much consensus that everyone is going to be placed on this. So I don't want to waste time if we don't have to doing this, but I also want to make sure we have an official committee. So I'll defer to you or Fred Riley if there's a point of order on how to do this properly.
It is in, I'm speaking to City Attorney Riley right now, Mayor. It is in the code that it does have to be a vote by ballot, but if they have named everybody on the ballot and they've accepted all, does it still have to be a written, correct?
I would simply do it by the ballot, so it's the way that you had contemplated, and that way it's absolutely consistent.
So.
Just an administrative detail, everybody will just fill out their ballots, exit in and sign it. We'll plan on moving forward with the consensus then.
Patty, one point of order, have you given Robin Monica and I have a telephone number to dial in to get my ballot, and I think it's going directly to Lynn Reed. She's going to act as my proxy here. But is there another mechanism for Robin Monica to do her vote?
Yes, I gave her my number.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Hello?
Mayor?
Yes, whenever you're ready, Madam Clerk, to run the results.
While city clerk is tabulating the data, I'll just go back to the draft charter for this group. Everybody probably had a chance to kind of look through it. Are there any additional inputs we'd like to add to that, or is it pretty much laid out and hits all the items we're looking for?
What I see is a perfect outline, a guideline to follow. I'm sure that as the meetings occur, maybe there will be some suggestions for amending this document. You may run across something that, may be up for debate. But overall, I think that this is an excellent guideline to get started.
Yeah, that's the minimum we're looking for. You can add to it and expand as you see fit. Next action then is the city manager will probably query the members of the ad hoc committee and set the first meeting date to hand out some documents with respect to sunshine law briefing and to go over the, as we call them, deliverables, what we're kind of looking for you to question and come back to the council with recommendations. And at that point, the committee will elect the chair and set their own meeting schedule at that point. So, anything else to add to that? Administrative details, you all set, City Clerk?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're all set.
There's no change in what everyone said, so I'm going to read these kind of quickly, okay?
Thank you.
Councilmember Aki voted for Ms. DeMolay, Mr. Gatliff, Ms. Frazier, Ms. Otero, Mr. Risberg, and Mr. Zabel, and Councilmember Gaddis. Councilmember Dean.
Patty?
Yes.
Madam Clerk?
Yes.
May I suggest that maybe we could just, let's just pretty much figure that they were unanimous and just, if there's anybody who didn't vote for somebody, we could bring that out. You can zip through this, I think, pretty quickly.
Well, I don't mind doing that, but it does state that it has to be read, so.
Okay, go ahead.
Wait, 1 second, Mr. Riley.
I would follow it the same way it was contemplated, so it's consistent.
Read each one individually. right?
Yeah, and just
Right. Thank
do
you.
it expeditiously, which I know you will.
Is that okay, Mayor?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Green voted for Ms. DeBonnet, Mr. Gatliff, Ms. Frazier, Ms. Otero, Mr. Risper, Mr. Zabel, and Councilmember Gaddis. Councilmember Gaddis voted for Ms. DeMolay, Mr. Gatliff, Ms. Frazier, Ms. Otero, Mr. Risper, Mr. Zabel, and Councilmember Gaddis. Vice Mayor Gunn voted for Ms. DeMolay, Mr. Gatliff, Ms. Frazier, Ms. Otero, Mr. Risper, Mr. Zabel, and Councilmember Gaddis. Mayor Manzo voted for Ms. DeMolay, Mr. Gatliff, Ms. Frazier, Ms. Otero, Mr. Risper, Mr. Zabel, and Councilmember Gaddis. Councilmember Shirley voted for Ms. DeMolay, Mr. Gatliff, Ms. Frazier, Ms. Otero, Mr. Risper, Mr. Zabel, and Councilmember Gaddis. Councilmember Swope voted for Ms. DeMolay, Mr. Gatliff, Ms. Frazier, Ms. Otero, Mr. Risper, Mr. Zabel, and Councilmember Gaddis. That completes the vote.
tallying that? Because I don't know that I heard them all clearly, but does anybody have a tally? I thought it was,
Yeah.
I don't think there was anything withheld, but maybe I missed something.
Mayor, they were all 7 positive votes for all members.
Oh, okay, so it's unanimous, 7-0 across the board. Everyone is applied on the committee. We'll turn it over to the city manager and the city clerk to coordinate the first meeting. At that point, you will elect a chairperson. If for some reason that you cannot come to an election of a chairperson, I think the rules call that we can appoint a person. I don't think that's ever been necessary, so you should be able to do that. And that you, on a monthly basis, you'll come back and give us a short status update of where you're going. Your chairperson will give us that update, and we may have some questions or direction that we wish to provide. Thank you very much, everyone who wants to participate. Looking forward to the results from this. Appreciate it.
Congratulations to all the applicants. Thank you for stepping up and staying engaged. We really appreciate your assistance. Back to you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, back to number 14 and number 15. They're both related, but we're going to do them individually. We have number 14 is a consideration of merit pay increase based on annual evaluation for the city manager. It's the merit increase based on city council employee evaluations. These were actually done a few months ago before this virus hit, and then we were not able to meet on this. So this was for the city manager. That's number 14. And number 15 is the same thing for the city clerk. Right now we're on number 14. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Vice Mayor, if you would, if there's any discussion on this, I think everybody's had their input, but if anyone wants to say anything, I'll open it up to council and to the citizens, and then we'll come back for a vote.
Council, any discussion, debate?
I noticed that the mayor did not rate the city manager. That did have an impact on the score, is that correct?
I did rate a portion of the city managers based on the fact of prior years' goals, which I wasn't involved in, so that's why I left that part out. Other than that, I did vote, I did rate him on the information that I had, and it goes by the overall scores anyway, and I think both of these are at least calling for a suggested 3% raise for both Patty Gentry and for Lynn Reeves, so I don't intend to be objecting to that, so I don't know if my score is going to matter that much, so go ahead.
Can I comment on that? I think that although we've come a long way with these review documents, we have nothing really that was really applicable to what we were reviewing. These are better. We're not sitting down with the city manager or the staff at all. Those that we rate, I think we should sit down with them. We should have those established goals, so when we are rating them, we have something to really quantitatively rate them on. This form is so much better, Lynn. Great job. We're getting there, but I think we still need some tweaks. It has nothing to do with your performance, just an overall statement on, to make it easier to review. And so as we move forward, we might want to put that as part of our goals, is to even tweak this a little more so that we can more accurately rate and be fair with staff.
I'll embellish that a little bit. Some of the fields on the evaluations were not observed, and I'm not quite sure those were taken into account when you averaged the numbers. So I don't know if it skewed the numbers or not, or...
No, what actually Patty did is, what she basically did is took the numbers by the things that were told, and just took the total numbers in total that were rated, and then took that and divided it by 7, and that came up with the average rating score.
No, I was referring to the individual evaluations because there's 7 fields, say, but 3 of them are unobserved. So when you total those, you divide by the total of 7 fields and just the number of fields that were marked in. See, that's my point. That skews the marks. So in other words, you look at mine and it looks like I'm really clobbering her, but the fact is that I didn't rate her in a couple of fields because they were unobserved. So I just want to make sure that she's getting credit for the fields that are observed. couple other things. Future goals, that's an important field, as Jody brings up here. Please take the time to think about what you want these people to be accomplishing over the next evaluation period. And secondly, please spend some time on these things. I think in general, people have done a really good job, but I think one of the things you really owe your people is to sit down and take the time and give them some feedback, positive and constructive feedback. If you just take all those marks to the right side and just say, did a great job, you're not being honest with those people, and you really owe it to them. So please consider that when you fill out these evaluations. Other than that, good job. I really appreciate it.
I just have a quick question too, looking for some clarification. Patty is the direct employee of yours, correct, City Manager?
Actually, she reports to me, but she's actually the direct employee of the city council.
Okay,
Right. Day-to-day operations, I supervise her, but she is an employee of the city council.
okay.
I think it's important to remember each one of us have an interaction with both Patty and the city manager. So our experiences with them over a year's period of time are all individual. So we all rate based on the experience we have with both individuals.
They're just guard against the halo effect. And everybody does everything sort of, so it provides a lot of feedback. To the residents, Ms. Lucci. Please, thank you very much.
I just wanted to make mention, you were speaking about goals, that you wanted the council to come up with goals for them for the next fiscal year or whatever it would be. Going back to my corporate days, it was actually put upon my employees to come up with goals on their own, also to present to the council of what they wanted to see happening or wanted to see happening in their job positions and or for the city. That's all I wanted to say. It might be a consideration.
Good points, thank you. And as Jody mentioned, we're still in the process of tweaking this and conveying a continuous improvement. We just take some notes here and perhaps at a future date, we'll sit down and add some things to the personnel manual or evaluations. Back to any other residents? Back to the council one last time? Nothing? It's to the mayor for the vote.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. So this is a consideration of merit pay increase based on the annual evaluation criteria for the city manager. It's a merit increase based on the city council employee evaluations. As I read Lynn Reese's summary here, he came up with a total of 4.26 total points, and based on the sliding scale, anything between 4.0 and 5.0 is a superior rating and calls for a 3% increase to be voted on. So if someone, just to make this official, because it doesn't say exactly what we're going to do, would somebody please amend our, or make a motion to amend this for a 3% increase, and then we'll call the vote on it. So we have to actually make the motion for the 3%, I think, and then approve that, and then actually approve the raise itself.
Vice Mayor here, I'll go ahead and amend the motion so that we include the merit increases actually specifically stated within the agenda.
I'll second that.
3%. Can we have a second? Any council discussion? Any citizen discussion? Back to council. Madam Clerk, this is on the amended motion for 3%, to make the raise percentage 3%. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bean,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley,
Aye.
Councilmember Swope,
Aye.
Councilmember Aki,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Aye. So the raise percentage is 3%. Now we are
Councilmember Bean,
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis,
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley,
Aye.
Councilmember Swope,
Aye.
Councilmember Aki, Vice Mayor Gunn,
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Aye, so the vote is 7-0. The 3% raise will be awarded to Lynn Reeves. I believe, Mr. Reeves, you and I spoke about this, and I think that gets awarded retroactively to when it was due originally. Is that not correct?
Yes, Mayor, it is, and I want to thank the council for the confidence in the raise and the evaluation.
Very well, good job. Thank you, and we're looking forward to having that raise implemented as soon as possible so you get your retro. Thank you much. Let's move on to item 15, which is a consideration of a merit pay increase based on the annual evaluation for the city clerk. And this is a merit increase based on the city council employee evaluations for city clerk Gentry. Do we have a motion first?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have a second? Vice Mayor, I'll open it up to you for comments from council, citizens, and then back to council, and then we'll do the same thing. Just so everyone knows that Gentry got her rating a 4.06 total points. That is also considered a superior because it's between 4.0 and 5.0, calling for a 3% increase. So I'm going to be asking for the same thing down the road, 3% amendment, and then ultimately the raise. But let's first go to consideration of the merit pay increase itself. Vice Mayor?
I'll just go ahead and amend the motion right now that we approve the merit pay increase, 3% for the city clerk. Discussion?
We have a second.
Second.
Any council comment on that? Any citizen comment on that?
No discussion.
Back to city. Back to council. Madam Clerk, this is to make a 3% raise, so the motion is being amended to specify that it be a 3% raise. You're only voting on the 3% number right now. Would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Bean,
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis,
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley,
Aye.
Councilmember Swope,
Aye.
Councilmember Aki, Vice Mayor Gunn,
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Aye. So that passes 7-0. We're talking about a 3% increase now. Now it's on the discussion of the review and the application of that raise. Again, Vice Mayor, I'll have you run it through council and then through the citizens.
I think we pretty much touched on all the inputs we wanted on the evaluation system. I don't think they need to be specific for a city manager or a city clerk, so I saw the city manager taking notes, so at some future time, I think one of the work sessions will probably throw out for a subject of tweaks to the evaluation system. Any discussion by council? Residents? Back to council one last time. Back to you, Mayor, for the vote.
Okay, thank you. So now this is the actual consideration to award the 3% merit increase based on the annual evaluation of Patty Gentry. It will also be retroactive. And Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Bean,
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis,
Aye.
Councilmember Shirley,
Aye.
Councilmember Swope,
Aye.
Councilmember Aki, Vice Mayor Gunn,
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Aye. So it's 7-0. Congratulations, Ms. Gentry. A 3% raise is in order, and that will also be retroactive to whenever it was due originally. And thank you, and Lynn, for your excellent work this year. Much appreciated.
Thank you all very much.
Mayor, Vice Mayor here, point of order.
Yes.
If it's agreeable, I propose that we just take about a 10-minute break here because I think we're about to get into the second half of this agenda list and it's going to be probably at least another hour and a half. So, objections?
Yes, I think so. Is there any objection to a 10-minute break? It is now 7:32, so why don't we just reconvene at 7:45 if that's good with everyone?
Okay.
7:45.
Objection, so
Thank you very much.
we can recess till 7:45.
Okay, this is item 16, consideration of payment request from Mayor Joseph Monzo and Ms. June Van Scoy for a public records request. The descriptor is request for payment from Mayor Monzo and Ms. Van Scoy for city records retained on personal email systems. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Now, let me ask the city manager if he can just kind of give us some background on this. Or he can refer to the city attorney or tag team or however you like. I'm just trying to.
Yes, Mayor, or Vice Mayor, we had a public records request of emails for the mayor and Ms. Van Scoy that pertained to city business. It was submitted to the city clerk, I believe it was September, Patty?
Yes.
Okay. And it took the city attorney, I don't recollect, 2 or 3 times. He spoke to the mayor and Ms. Van Scoy, and in the end, they were given to the city clerk in December, to my recollection. And the request is for $315 from the mayor. The documents are in the packet, and $280 for Ms. Van Scoy. Background information basically is that the mayor had a city address email account provided, and Ms. Van Scoy was instructed to copy the city clerk on all communication that pertained to city business. They decided to use their own personal email. So that's what this is about when someone made a public record.
I'll make a few comments. I wrote a memo that was included in the packet, and then a legal opinion that I provided was also included in the packet. When this initially came, this public records request came in, the city did not have a public records policy, and the city commission or council did approve a public records policy that was put in place in the first meeting in December. So from this point forward, you have what I would say is a pretty comprehensive policy, but I think it's very important to make a distinction when most of this issue was on the table. There was no city policy on public records, which means that you were relying on Chapter 119 Florida statutes, which is the statute related to public records. There's, if you've ever looked at Chapter 119, it's a, at times complicated chapter in Florida statutes. There's a book that is well known in municipal government in Florida, and it's called the Sunshine Manual, and it's a lengthy, I want to say 350 to 400 page book that is primarily about public meetings and public records. In evaluating this, there was not something that was, I would say, exactly on point. And as I said in my memo that provided background on this, it's arguable whether there should be reimbursement or not. Having said that, did say in my memo that due to the amounts, this is not something that you typically would want to go litigate, because that would to me be a very inefficient way to resolve this type of issue. I also said in my memo to the city council that I do not have a doubt that the mayor and Ms. Van Scoy did the work that they said they did to generate the records. During this 3-month period, I was involved quite a bit in trying to get this resolved, and I worked with the city clerk, and primarily, although I also work with city manager periodically on it, every time I touched it, I tried to say this was the time we were going to completely resolve the issue, although it took several months to finally get it to a completion point, but it was completed in December, and subsequent to that, the mayor and Ms. Vanscoy provided both of them provided statements and sought reimbursement for the time they had spent. I haven't talked with them. Lynn and I met with them, and we, I would say, did our level best to try and find a way to resolve this, and we were unable to do so. And the only fair thing to do to everybody concerned was to have it, at this point, be brought to the city council for it to be addressed. So I can certainly answer any questions that you all may have, but that's really where it stands.
I have a question. Do you have some idea of what the total cost for your legal fees were for this incident?
I don't have I never went back and added it up. I would say it's probably several $1,000s.
May I go ahead and make a comment? Back in February, during the city council meeting, I brought up the legal fees that we were paying out because they were substantially higher than normal. And from September to December, I mentioned we paid out $2,700 additional dollars directly related to the public records, and another $3,900, but that was a combination of different items that he would discuss. So I don't know how much of that $3,900 was directly related to the public records request, but I brought that up in the February 2020 city council meeting at that time.
There's one thing I'd like to say, and this was all created by an anonymous caller, which really gets under my skin. The other thing is maybe city manager and the attorney could really explain in volume how much this actually was. Was it a ream, say a whole ream of paper, or how much is it? I mean, yeah, if you put it on a flash drive, it's nothing, but an actual paper, what's the amount? That had to be
The number of documents,
number of documents.
I don't know offhand, but the way that it was finally resolved is that both the mayor and Ms. Vanscoy did provide flash drives that had all the documents. The time that they spent, to my understanding, was on doing a necessary part of this, which is going through the emails and making sure that there wasn't anything that was an exempt material, and redacting anything. They would be able to better explain if they redacted things, but that is part of the process, whether it's them or if I was tasked with fulfilling a public records request, or the city clerk would, you still have to go through and do those steps because those are necessary.
As far as the time that they're charging, is it realistic? The amount of work?
I would say it is.
Did the city charge the requester for the produced documents? Patty, Lynn? Yes? How much did we charge for it?
It was not this amount, because we were instructed by the city attorney to give it to them for the request.
So what did we base it on then? I mean, I don't know how you charge them if you don't base it on what's provided, or there's, I mean, clearly read several recommendations from our city attorney about, the amount we could charge and things like that, and his opinion, and there was some opinions that seemed to conflict with relation to this chapter 119, and I have to say, there was no policy with the city about a requirement to use city emails. Matter of fact, when I was elected to office, no one had a city email. Everyone on council used a private email address, making it very difficult if something like this came up before. There was no policy in place that even if you did give someone a city email, nothing says they have to use it. So I insisted, and I think I started a trend of us having city emails. I think that, you're asking us to talk about an issue, but you're not providing us some facts here that are important. What did we charge? That's kind of important to know. Clearly, they spent time. We all know this is a volunteer position, and to be harassed by some anonymous requester is kind of a difficult situation. So I'm certain they probably spent the time. I'm certain they probably used a lot of their hard-earned resources to produce this stuff. I'm in favor of us reimbursing them. And I just think that we're all kind of in this volunteer position, and now that we have a policy in place, then people need to follow the policy, but we didn't have a policy in place. And as long as they're following chapter 119 of the Sunshine Law, then I don't see where we have, a leg to stand on, really. I don't know why we're disputing it.
I'll make one comment about the anonymous nature of this. Under Florida law, that is permitted for somebody to make an anonymous request. So I will say, in this situation, it didn't make it easier to work through the process because the anonymous request came in the form of a telephone call or calls to the city clerk, and it was the system that we used is it's not like an email where the city clerk could forward an email that had everything, and it was a process that it was an imperfect process. Although I will say on my behalf, on the city clerk's behalf, there was an effort every time we worked with it to try and find a way to solve the request. And one other aspect of this, I think I would be remiss if I didn't say, with Ms. Van Scoy, she's not an elected official, she's an appointed official, and I don't think in the past that you've had requests for records that related to somebody that was appointed to a board. And yet, they are public records if they fit the category. So they're fair game for somebody to make a public records request. And I will also tell you that this is one of the areas of the law. It's why I referenced the Sunshine Manual. Sunshine Manual is 350, 400 pages. It's highly technical. If you have insomnia, you should pick that book up. But a lot of the problems that are itemized in the Sunshine Manual are straight from Florida case law, and they're summarized in this book, and they cover all these different aspects of the Sunshine Law. Having said that, technology is always ahead of the law, and that is always the case. It's always going to be the case, and it's difficult to write a law that fits with the current state of technology, because there was a time 25 years ago, emails really weren't used. You certainly didn't have text messages, and I've said for years that a text message is a public record if you're doing city business. And not to give anybody any great ideas, please forget I said this, but you know, if somebody wanted to ask for text messages, they could do that, and that would be difficult. It's not undoable, but it's a difficult task to go through and download those and chronicle it, especially for people they're not particularly tech savvy. And I will speak for myself. I could eventually figure it out on a cell phone, but you know, it'd take a while. So my point being, the law is always lagging behind with technology, but the law in Florida is, if it's a public record, there's an obligation for the person that is the custodian of the public record to provide it. And the public records in this case were on the emails of non-city emails, and that's what they spent the time retrieving and putting on the flash drives. And as I said earlier, it's my good faith understanding that they spent the time that they indicated putting these documents on the flash drives so that the public records could be ultimately, the request could be met.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What would you consider to be the biggest hurdle of gathering this data? Would it be the actual gathering, or would it be the resistance to actually start gathering the data?
I would say, with these two individuals, or are you asking a general question?
I'm speaking in this case in particular.
I don't think it was a case of they were unwilling to do it. I would say they weren't as enthusiastic about doing it as you might desire, but we worked through the process to explain what the law was and what needed to be done.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be enthusiastic about doing it either if I were in the same position. Once it became apparent that the technology way of doing it, then I think that made it a lot easier.
I've got some questions. We never captured the full costs. I mean, we've got billable hours from the city attorney, but I mean, as far as your staff goes, the city clerk put in innumerable hours trying to work these issues. So, I mean, there are some costs that we don't even have any idea what they are. And yet, we did not and we may never recoup the real cost of this thing. So, I'll throw that out there. We've come up with a public records policy now, and even that's still in the process of being tweaked. Jody talked about the timeline of this thing. The council before us had issues with this very same thing. It was the email address issue, and public records requests had been weaponized even back then for nefarious purposes or whatever. Things started to change when we came on. But now let's continue the timeline, because we're talking about events that took place a year after us. And I think we may have already transitioned through some of those issues. So the real question is what safeguards were in place to protect the city and council members and employees with respect to public records requests? You briefed them with respect to sunshine laws and that sort of thing. When the council members came on, the most recent council members, were they briefed at that time to use city email, and were they providing email addresses for the city?
Patty did provide those email addresses. They were transitioned, because we had bought them as a packet for the young council members. She transitioned them over and issued all of them to the council members at the time, shortly after the election. I can't tell you the exact date.
So the last round of elected officials were providing city email addresses. Now, so far as Ms. Vascoy goes, being on the Parks and Rec board, I mean, my feeling is that there's some protections there, and although she was not provided a city email address, was she briefed to provide copies to the city clerk under sunshine guidelines and for safeguards?
Yes, we would tell all of the boards that if we have anything we want to speak to each other.
Please use your mic.
Sorry. Yes, if we tell everyone that if they want to have something communicated to their board or to the board members, that it all go through the clerk's office, because we did not have individual emails, so everyone's told, send it through the clerk's office, or the clerk's office will disseminate it.
So everybody was briefed on the repercussions and the possible problems that it can create by not informing the city or using a city email address, and they understand that they don't fall under our protection then when it comes to public records requests. Is that
Yes.
kind of the sticky wicket here? So if the mayor didn't use a city email address after being provided one, the question is that an at-risk behavior? Because he's basically being provided a city email address to safeguard him against the expenses and that sort of thing, and he chose not to. The second follow-up question then is, if Ms. Vascoy copied the city clerk on board or committee businesses, then she's kind of affording those safeguards for public records. The question is what percentage of those emails that were requested in the public records request pertain to the board and committee or to other matters of city importance that were involved with assisting the mayor or some other business? Do you have some kind of breakdown on that? In other words, were all the emails provided by Ms. Vascoy, were they all 100% board, committee, parks and rec board issues, or was there a split there?
I think there was probably, a portion of it was stuff that Ms. Vascoy disseminated for the mayor, I guess, at the times, to other municipalities and government agencies. I can't tell you what the exact number is. I mean, I think the majority of it was for the park board, where she was requesting things from vendors and this, that, and the other information. I don't even know what the total number is. Do you recollect?
I don't recollect, but I will say, if the standard that's applied is if relates to city business, then it's a public record. So that was the standard that, to my knowledge, was applied. And in Ms. Vascoy's case, she was the head of, or still is, the head of the Parks committee, and she took a very active role, and to my knowledge did a lot of the work that she was doing on the Parks committee related to was via email. So, the objective and the net that had to be cast to comply with the law was if it was a public record related to city business, no matter what it was, that should have been produced, and to my knowledge, that is what she produced.
But the distinction is that if she's addressing city business as part of the park and rec board, that's city business and that's a public record. If she's discussing city business as June Vascoy, president of Bel Air Beach, then that relationship doesn't exist. Where it starts getting cloudy is if she starts dealing with city business as an extension or assistant to the mayor. And then it starts, I think, in my mind, starts getting fuzzy as to whether or not you start with skirting issues with the sunshine laws and public records. So at the end of the day, you ask some of these questions to the state attorney general, and what was the final recommendation as our city attorney? Should we pay these or not?
Well, I wrote an opinion, and the opinion was based on my discussion with Pat Gleason, or, you know, the number of things. I didn't just rely on her. I looked at the statutes and the Florida Attorney General opinions, and there was a case that I referenced in one of my legal opinions, and based on that case, I made the recommendation that they not be reimbursed. But I will again tell you, it's an arguable case, and I don't doubt that they spent the time doing this, and that would be my evaluation of it at this point.
Any other counsel?
For us to make a decision one way or the other, Brad, do you have any idea of what, I mean, we don't know who the requester was, but with you looking at all the material, do you have an idea of what they were looking for?
Well, that part is not to give a bad answer, but I'll give you a good answer. It's irrelevant. If it's it can, under Florida law, there's case law, well, I certainly don't know it off the top of my head, where an anonymous request is acceptable under Florida law. You are not allowed to ask the motivation for what the person's doing. The legal standard is a public record being requested, and if it is a public record, then the custodian is obligated to produce it. And the language that Vice Mayor Gunn used of it being cloudy, at times the facts pattern is cloudy and the legal standards are cloudy, and that's why I use the example of technology being out in front of the law. Someday the law will catch up, but you already know the technology will simply keep evolving and be ahead of the law. This is one of the murkiest aspects of governmental law in the state of Florida now. And the reason being that people use computers, tablets, and they use cell phones, and it's just a murky area of the law.
So in other words, if I wanted to aggravate somebody, I could call in anonymously and ask for a public records request on a certain date, and just aggravate somebody with no reason.
You could do that. The thing that deters you people from doing that now is that you have a policy, and you've set the policy so that if somebody makes a request, and I'm just going to give a hypothetical example. If somebody calls in and said to you, I want, in a telephone call to the city clerk, I want all Lynn Reed's emails from the last year, they oftentimes, the people think that's as easy as the city clerk pressing a button and all those get downloaded to the flash drive. It's not that easy. There may be, and I'm making up numbers, Lynn Reeves may have 10,000 emails over the course of the last year. And, you know, some of them would be related to, and I'm picking something easy, two easy things. One is personnel records, and if they were related to personnel records, then you have to be sensitive about people's social security numbers. If it relates to something in a criminal investigation, then you have to be extremely careful, because there's a whole bunch of things that concern criminal investigations that you know, up until a certain point, you would be violating the law if you disclose those things. Ultimately, if that request was made prior to this policy, then Lynn or somebody else at his direction would have to go through and look through each of the 10,000 emails and make sure there wasn't something that needed to be redacted. Subsequent to this policy would be put in place, if it's over a nominal time commitment, then you go through the steps and you make a projection as to what will be the cost for a substantial public records request. And in the case of 10,000 emails from Lynn Reeves, what Patty would ultimately do pursuant to the policy is say, okay, we project that based on 10,000 emails, it will take this person X number of hours to review the 10,000 emails, and here's how, I'm just picking a number. This is a $15 an hour employee, and it will take them, 7 hours, and that you can't do the math that quick. When done, you're the one that can. But that's how you figure it out now pursuant to the policy. In this case that you're discussing this evening, the policy wasn't in place yet. So if one positive thing comes out of this situation, is that you now have a policy. To comment on Mark Beam's point, and I'm really hesitant to say this, but I will say it. If you wanted to cause a whole bunch of trouble to a city, you could bring a small city to its knees with public records requests. And that's very unfortunate. I don't think that's what the law is really set up to do. But the good thing is you have the policy in place so that you at least give somebody a projection. And if they want it, then you go forward on the basis that you're going to be reimbursed for the actual costs in producing the public records. I will tell you, in the other city that I work for, that's exactly why we put that policy into place, because we had too many requests where people spent an inordinate amount of time producing documents, and the people then never even came and picked them up. And of course, they never paid for them. Well, now the city uses the policy, you get a deposit, and when the person comes to pick up, you then get the remainder of the cost of producing the documents. What really should happen is that if somebody makes a large, expansive public records request, there are things that you could do to try and narrow it down. And I'm just going to give it, for instance, if somebody said, I want Lynn Reeves emails for the week beginning June 1 through June 7, 2020, that's a very finite period of time, and that is probably, I'm just making up numbers, that may be 100 emails, because Lynn writes 13 a day or something like that. It's a predictable amount of time. That won't take forever. But where you have a lot of trouble is when the request comes in and it's a very expansive request. This one that we're talking about was that kind of request, and I again say it was prior to you having a policy. Yes, sir.
Well, it's my observation that now that we have a public records policy, we could have recouped some of the costs and might serve as a deterrent for this thing. But the fact that they stepped outside of the city email address, the current public records policy doesn't cover that. I think there's been some changes proposed to plug those holes, but I don't think the current policy would have precluded the issue as I see it right now.
I'd like to make a comment. Basically, if you're going to send any type of city business type emails, as long as you're using a City of Bel Air Beach email address or you CC Patty, she is the custodian of these records. If you decide to send an email, public business with private email, you are the custodian. Now, I volunteer for this position. I don't get paid for it. Therefore, I don't also want to be the custodian of my own email records. That's why I insist on doing all of my city business with a City of Bel Air Beach email address. And in the event that I cannot get to that, Patty is CC'd on it. And I think she can verify that. And I would suspect that that's what most of us do. But during this time period, those emails were not CC'd, and they were used on separate email servers outside of the City of Bel Air Beach. That's the last comment.
So you just articulated the point that the holes and gaps that are being plugged by the changes to the existing public records policy is it specifically states now that if you are an elected official or a city staff employee, then you are safeguarded against these costs if you use your City of Bel Air Beach email address or you copy the city clerk on it. If you are not provided a city email address and you are doing city business like on a board or committee, as long as you copy the city clerk on those emails, then you are safeguarded against any kind of public records search and your expense. Am I missing something there? Is that the case? So.
Sometime during this same period, I had a public records request, which they handled it and didn't notify me, which I'm also against that. I think that if you get a request, that you should be notified that someone's asking for your public record. So as part of our policy, that should be included. But and I think Patty just provided them the cost, the fee schedule, and the requester went away. So I'm not sure how this call was handled when it came in. Was the same procedure taken, Patty? Or was the fee schedule, you know, remember with mine, you said you just provided them a fee schedule and then they never pursued it any further.
Here's what, quite a while ago, so I can't remember exactly, but the previous city attorney provided me a standard answer that I always sent to everyone, which said, follow this statute, you know, we'll provide you a cost if you want to know. And as soon as a lot of people, as soon as they found out that there would be a cost, then they just never answered. Yeah.
So I would be curious to see how that was handled too, even knowing you didn't have access to those. I would think that would be the same process with the request for these two. Do you know if
Yeah,
that's?
so if I would have had them, if I had been the custodian, yes, just like yours, I would have replied to the requester and given them the option to have me provided and at a cost.
So since you weren't the custodian, you did not reply in that same manner, is that right? I mean, for both the mayor and Ms. Vanscourt, you didn't provide that same
I
blanket
don't
statement.
recall, but I can't see how I would have. Do you remember, Fred, how the response to the requester?
I'm having trouble hearing that.
I'm sorry. Do you remember how, because I couldn't provide the response as the custodian, do you remember how the response was provided to the requester? I mean, I can find out, you know, because I have a record of it, I just don't recall.
Yeah, so I think that should just be kind of standard, no matter whether you have access to those or not. It should be a standard reply to every requester that, you know, here's your statement and here's the fee. I'm just curious if that was how you replied or how did you reply?
So I have to check for you unless you ever recalls.
Well, my knowledge is somewhat limited because I never spoke to the person that made the request. Patty and I worked on it for months. One of the problems in throughout the process is Patty did not have a basis to gauge the number of records because the records were on a private server, and that, to me, makes it very difficult for her to gauge, what, or project what the cost would be until you ultimately had the records produced. Is that
Yeah, but
what
when she answered my request, she didn't give them a dollar number. She said, here's the price per page, the hourly rate. It was a price sheet, if you will. It wasn't, here's how much it's gonna cost me to produce what you're requesting. So, if we didn't send that out, I'm just having a hard time with how this whole thing was handled. It sounds from all parties. I just think that there was no policy in place. City can't answer how they handled it when the request came in. It's a mess. And here we are wasting another 2 hours on it. I'm really frustrated with, we're not getting city business done, and you're wasting my time, quite frankly. And I'm not getting paid for this. I'm tired of this. We're talking over something that is not going to get solved. And I'm very frustrated right now because there's no procedure. No one's following procedure at all. All parties involved here, both sides. And it's creating a nightmare for us on council to have to weed through all this.
I've got 2 final questions and I'm done. And I will ask the mayor directly, were you aware that when you used a private email that you were supposed to be copying the city clerk?
You want to answer that question?
Yes.
There's no legal requirement to do that. None. Nowhere. Okay? And you can use private email to this day. It's your option. It's suggested. It might be best practices if you wish to use the city email, but there's nothing that stops you. And when you do, then go back to the letter that I wrote, and it talks about how you become a custodian of records. You're not compelled by our city code, by the state statutes, or anything else to use a city email. You're not compelled. And if you choose to do it by yourself, Tarl provides for payment.
So when you made that decision, you de facto became the custodian of your public records.
That's correct. And based on 11907 4D, it permits an agency for which I and Ms. Vanscoy are to be compensated for our time. These people ask for every single email, including, and you go through my personal business. Because once in a great while, a client may say to me, how's things going in Bel Air Beach? I actually have to look through that. Thousands upon thousands of emails. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to step back out of it. Okay, thanks.
And the same question to Ms. Vanscoy then is, when you were dealing with Park and Rec Board committee business with the city, there was no thought to copy the city clerk on those emails?
No, in fact, actually, I questioned the city manager at one of my park board meetings and asked how we should handle it. Right on one of my park board meeting boards, it's on record, asking how we should handle this, and would the city please issue us a city email address? And he said they do not do that. He said that was his words. The city does not issue them. Okay, so I have a little thing that I'm going to read when it comes up to my part, but I just, I did ask, and the city wouldn't do it. So he did not give me any guidance. I don't count the training that you guys get as a council, but I was not given any guidance at that time, at the even of this, of what to do with those emails. Okay? Never. I've just been holding them.
Any more questions?
I would like to make my final comment on it. There was months of your interaction with them going back and forth with regards to these city emails, correct?
Yes.
I mean, from
Council members, oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Vanscoy had asked if you could speak into the mic. She can't hear you.
Okay, this went on for months, correct? City attorney?
Yes, it
started in
did.
September, ended in December with the files being given. I'm confused on why it would take so many months to do it to begin with. I think the taxpayers have paid enough in attorney fees, because the additional attorney fees were quite substantial. And I just think that they made the decision to be their own keeper of the record keeper, whatever you want to call it. So I don't see why the city and the taxpayer should spend any more money on this at all. And that's my final word on it.
Any more debate or just, hang on just 1 second, please. From the council, anything else? Residents? Eileen?
I have.
Okay, just a moment.
Okay.
Question. When a public official decides to become the custodian of public records, why wouldn't the requester of these public records have to foot the bill if, instead of the council? And in the future, if any of you decide that you're going to use your private email to do public business, that's your decision. Therefore, you become the custodian of those public records, and you have the obligation to pay the cost or charge the cost of whoever's requesting the records. But I would think that you have a duty to provide the governing body with those public records as part of your responsibility.
Mr. Hanson?
Sorry?
There's another speaker.
Okay, I'm sorry.
John Hansick, 103 22nd Street. Quick question. Do we now have a working policy regarding this subject in effect? Yes or no?
That's
Okay.
affirmative, and we're tweaking it still to cover this specific loophole. If people choose not to use their city-provided email address, or they refuse to copy the city clerk, then the revised public records request, I anticipate, will basically allow those people to pay the costs. They don't have the safeguards of the city taking on the public records custodial responsibilities if they choose not to use a city email address or copy the city clerk.
Okay, thank you. Is this available online at the city's website? I'd like to review it. Okay. All right. I find it hard to believe that certain people in this particular topic were not aware of the Sunshine Law, whatever. I know that when I volunteered and was appointed to be on the Finance Committee, that very first meeting, it was emphasized in bold wording about the Sunshine Law, and that if there was anything the committee needed to communicate amongst itself, it had to go through the city clerk. And I can attest that everything we did went through the city clerk. Now, I give you all a suggestion too. We used to call this sailor proofing. The mayor was afforded, or the mayor is afforded an email. Each one of you council members, I understand, is afforded an email. Maybe it should become policy that if you're going to conduct city business representing the city of Bel Air Beach, that you have had the synopsis of the Sunshine Law, and that in doing business, you will use the city's email to preclude this. We spent an hour hashing this out. Now, we got to run a tab with the attorney I'm as frustrated as the council is that we're still hashing this out. Anyway, my sailor-proofing suggestion is an acknowledgement. You've been explained the rules of the Sunshine Law. You either accept or reject the use of a city-approved email address for city business. And then another caveat, if you refuse, you're responsible for anything on a public records request. And it becomes part of the city records. And I'm going to leave it up to the conscience of the council as to how you all want to vote on this. Thank you.
Ron Sudanek.
Once again, at 2219 Donato. First of all, as a citizen, I'm embarrassed by the length of this discussion and the cost that the city's incurred. I think the mayor has demonstrated a characteristic that he believes he's beyond reproach. The rules are straightforward. I'm almost certain, even though I know that it was Gentry shared what the rules of the Sunshine Law were when he was brought in, sworn into office. I believe that Ms. Van Scoyt was given the rules of the Sunshine Law when she was sworn into office for her committee. This is a cost of tuition for the two of them. I recommend on behalf of the citizens that you vote no to this reimbursement and move on to the new business at hand.
Any other residents? Mr. Calucci?
I would like to speak.
Next.
Next after Mr. Calucci.
Hi, Rick Calucci, 104 9th Street. Just 3 brief points, as I agree with you, too much time on this. I just want to know, are these two individuals still using their personal devices for city business? 2, it was a choice. The choice was made to use that. Whether or not you compensate them or not, I'll leave that up to you. But hopefully it's a lesson learned. Thank you.
Ms. Van Scoy?
On September 12, 2019, both the mayor and myself got the I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
Patty?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, then you need to start my time over because you cut me off. I'm sorry. On September 12, 2019, both the mayor and myself got the anonymous records request. Although I will be referencing several tonight, the mayor's correspondence with
I'm sorry, June, that's time, June. Ms. Van Scoy? Any other comments from the residents? No other questions from the residents? Back to the council for one last discussion or debate, anything? Call the question?
Call the question, please.
Okay, so the motion is consideration of payment request for Mayor Joseph Monzo and Ms. June Van Scoy for public records request. City Clerk, you're going to call the roll?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Dean,
Nay.
Councilmember Gaddis,
No.
Councilmember Shirley,
No.
Councilmember Swope,
No.
Councilmember Aki. Aye. Vice Mayor Gunn
Nay.
and Mayor Manzo have recused himself? Okay,
No, I vote aye for June, and I recuse myself on my own.
thank you.
Results?
For Mayor Manzo, that's 6-0, does not pass. And for Ms. Van Scoy, that's 5-2, does not pass.
Okay, for agenda item 16, consideration for payment and request, the Mayor Monzo and Ms. June Van Scoy are defeated. On to agenda item number 17, back to the mayor.
Okay, thank you. Board reports, item 17, I don't know if there's any board representatives there, but if there are, they can come forward and make a presentation. Do we have any board?
Mr. Kelly is here. Would you like to speak, Mr. Kelly?
Mr. Kelly's coming to the mic.
Mike Kelly, 2740 Hibiscus Drive West. As far as the Board of Adjustment goes, there's been no applications for new hearings. So in the past quarter, we have not had any hearings, and to my knowledge, we have a resignation of the chairperson. I'll let Patty elaborate on that.
Yes, sir. The chair did resign, Ms. Martha Vasquez, and as you are the vice chair, then you would take that position until the next election.
That's all there is for the report for Board of Adjustment. Thank you.
So when will the next election be? Is there an application period for new Board of Adjustment members?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Van Scoy.
Yes, we have not had any meetings. In fact, we have had to reschedule 2 different events, and I'm looking for some guidance from the council as to, before I might schedule another Parks Board meeting, if they would like me to go ahead and try to start scheduling events again, and if so, then I will schedule the Parks Board so we can proceed as planned originally.
Anything else?
That's it.
Council, do you want to comment on that?
I'm not sure that we were finished with the Board of Adjustments. We didn't allow the citizens to comment.
Board, well, all right, well, okay, if there's any citizen questions on Board of Adjustments, sure.
I had one question regarding the application period for new members. Has that started? Is there a suspended state on that?
It's on hold.
But I think too, Mr. Vice Mayor, that it's important that there has been an appointment, to my knowledge, of another alternate who is filling a position. She's a former full serving member of the committee. And to my knowledge, Patty, correct me if wrong, Carol Connery is now back on the Board of Adjustment as a voting member.
So we're looking to fill an alternate position, is that correct?
I don't believe Ms. Connery has been moved to a permanent position, so until that happens, then,
Shouldn't council vote on that?
yeah, well, they do need to vote on that, but
And they do it tonight?
Along with any other applications, particularly ag, I don't believe.
correct.
So you have to go through a formal application process to fill that post again?
Yeah, we would still present the applications to council for your selection.
So as tonight, there's a vacancy of one person as a regular voting member of the Board of Adjustment, and then the council is to take action on it next month.
Ms. Connery was the alternate, right? And
Yeah,
she
and-
stepped in to fill the full
And
time.
prior to that, she was a voting member of the Board of Adjustment.
So do we backfill the alternate, or are we still looking for a full-time board member?
What you have to do is fill the,
Fills in on the board, and then we have to appoint the permanent person. Obviously, she's going to apply, and there may be other people, so it's a full consideration, it's a full application process.
Okay, so you're gonna work with the details?
Mr. Vice Mayor, any more questions for me?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, are there any other issues on the Board of Adjustment or any other boards before we go back to the Parks Board?
Citizens' comments, anything else from the council? Back to you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So Parks Board has asked some input as to what we want to do. Is there any comments on that at this point? We want to get together, we want to give the input back to the Parks Board Chairman.
I can't hear you.
I think it would be helpful if we had, if they spooled up their meetings again and came to us at the next council meeting or work session with what they're considering. I mean, I think we're kind of all out of the loop of where we stood with the Parks Board. I hate to say it.
Any other comments? Sure. Well, wait, hang on. Is there, Vice Mayor Gunn, would you please see if there's any other comments there from the council, and then Parks Board Chairman has a question. So I'll just, why don't you just handle that part and then bring it back to me, and I'll move on to item 18 then.
I have a question. When was the last actual meeting with Parks and Rec?
Answer that? Am I allowed to answer that?
Yes.
Yes, you know.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. I truly don't know. I don't have them in front of me.
To Ms. Shirley's point, I would say that I would like the chair of the Parks and Rec Board to set your agenda and come to the council with recommendations. I don't think you necessarily need to come to us to get that kind of micromanagement. Just spool up your board members, set a date, and come to us with some ideas and recommendations.
Isn't there any,
I think we made that in the past also.
isn't there any way we can get a report like the planning board does, the finance committee and all those did, so that we can actually have something laid out in front of us with a little bit more detail, just so we can have an idea. So, because to Councilmember Sherrill's point, we all are out of the loop on it, and we don't have any kind of documentation we fall back to get into the loop on.
We did submit to the council and was approved an agenda of events. So I'm basically looking to see if the council wants me to rally back around again of the events that we postponed, which was the first one up would be the car show.
We need to circle back on this at the work session. Okay. That's the action item out of this then. We will circle back and make that an agenda item for the June work session and resolve this at that point. Anything else?
And then I will just go ahead and get a Parks Board meeting scheduled.
It seems like a good solution, and if you do that for us, then you can even give us your recommendations before the work session.
Yep, absolutely, that's the plan.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments on the Parks Board before we see if there's any other boards there, that the only board that's left is planning at this point? Anybody from planning board?
No.
Then we'll-
No, the planning board said they did not have any updates.
Okay, so then that closes the board reports, and we can move on to item 18. We're going to handle this the same way. We'll call the issue first, and then turn it over to the Vice Mayor to run through the council and citizen comments, and then back for a vote. So item 18 is to authorize the city manager to accept and proceed with the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant for Bayside Park. It was placed on the agenda by the city manager. This is a matching funds grant for the improvements to Bayside Park. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I think that was Mark Beam. Motion, yes. Second? Is there a second? I think I heard some, please speak in the mic.
I'll second it.
Dave Gass.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. It's open for discussion. Vice Mayor?
Council? Discussion, debate?
Yeah, I would like to make a few comments. I've reached out to a number of people in our community as well as they've reached out to me the last few days. And I also recall the last work session that we had where we had talked with City Manager Reeves regarding the cost of the tennis courts, the gazebo, and that we pretty much had those funds in place to go ahead and handle those. So I'm not getting the feedback from the community that they want to proceed with this entire grant. They would rather, fix the things that we had talked about in the last meeting and then keep on just maintaining and, taking care of the items that we have when they come up rather than going to this kind of a dollar amount for a park here in Delray Beach.
I've had some conversations with neighbors with kids since this coronavirus, and they would prefer that this park is renovated so they can spend more time here, especially the beach. And there's a lot of kayakers on our island, as well as the south side of the city. And they have conveyed that they would like a place where they will put their kayaks in. And there have been a lot of complaints about parking on 9th Street and doing events. Well, we could actually put a gate at the end there, the entrance of the park, and then at the park entrance, go through the parking lot between the Frontier Building and City Hall, or the parking lot, City Hall, but potentially. So, I would be for it. I think it's a good thing, and there's a lot of realtors that my wife knows, and that's one of the things, any family coming into the neighborhood with children or just want to enjoy a park, they prefer to look at the parks before they purchase, just to see what the community has to offer. That's my comments.
Anybody else? Council?
We can't hear you.
Sorry, my mic wasn't about this. I think that, you know, we have a strategic plan. When the application was being processed, we indicated that it wasn't part of the plan, probably wouldn't be good to move forward with it. We've been awarded it. It's great work that, you know, Kyle's done getting this grant awarded, but we still aren't in a position to enter into a commitment like this when we have unresolved flooding issues, deferred maintenance, infrastructure problems. We shouldn't be spending money on a new boardwalk that I'm not sure who's going to use it. Things like that probably aren't, well, they're not part of the plan we laid out before this council a year ago, and I'm just cautious in how we spend our money. And as Ms. Swope said, I've spoke to several residents in the community, and I've found very little support in taking the grant. So given that we have what we need to repair the tennis courts, which I know is the main item right now, and can also swing the gazebo, I think that that's the route we should take as we go and get done what we've set to get done.
I'd like to add to that. Basically, looking at people right now that we just went, told them that we're looking after $15 a month.
I can't hear anything. Blindwater, I can't hear.
Sorry, I got it. Basically, we just presented a case to the community that we're going to ask for $15 a month for the majority of citizens in this city because we can't afford to fix our stormwater issue. We also have money already budgeted for other items in the very park. And the reason why we have that money budgeted is because we're required to maintain those items from other gifts from other places. So not only are we committing to spending that amount of money, but we also are committing to many years of having to maintain all of these beautiful items that look real nice on the outside. I feel like once this building is paid off, which I believe that's not too far off in the future, we'll have quite a bit more money, and we won't have to worry about where we get money from quite as bad. We're going to work on the storm drains. This building's going to no longer be a burden. And I think that right now, this is not the time to be spending that money on this park. I would like to see it renovated. But again, after presenting our case, we're going to hit everybody's water bill monthly to take care of a problem we already can't afford. It just doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to have to vote no.
Any other council?
Mayor, I'd like to speak.
Mayor?
Yes, thank you. We have one park in our city that's accessible to all people in the city, and it's a beautiful park, but it has not been modernized in many, many years. And I was on Parks Board as an alternative Parks Board when this thing came up. A lot of work was done by the Parks Board and also by the city management, including Lynn Reeves and Kyle Riegler, to get us this grant. We finished second highest in the state. It was
Citizens, Eileen Woodside.
I'm going to want to speak on it for the Parks and Rec Board.
For the board or as a resident?
Hello, my name is Eileen Woodside. I happen to live across the street. If Bel Air Beach has any extra money, I think many more citizens would benefit if the fountain across the street which had been removed, who knows how, or it just happened, it was removed. But the fountain is a very attractive feature of anyone entering the city. I happen to be very concerned about the safety and the sanitation that I face all the time living across the street. This beautification of this area on this side of the road will bring in a lot more strangers, people that are not Bel Air Beach residents. As it is, I'm having strangers come across the front of my house, along the pond. People go fishing in the pond, even though there's a sign that says no fishing. People come down through this area on this side of the road and come along the water underneath the bridge, even though there are signs on both sides of the bridge, no trespassing. These strangers come along, they come up on my property in the back along the water. The amount of garbage I end up having to pick up is very tiresome. I'm much more concerned with the strangers that are coming around. If there's going to be a beautification of the park on this side of the road, I surely hope it includes hiring a full-time employee to pick up the garbage along this road. I am tired of seeing people riding bicycles on the sidewalk. The safety factors, there's just such disregard. It's not pleasant. I would appreciate the address of safety be addressed and sanitation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Mr. Sianek?
I would like to speak on it.
And then Jim.
Did you use me? I can't hear.
We've got Mrs. Sianek, and then that'll be followed by Jim.
Ron Siganek, 2219 Donato. Appreciate this coming before the town and the council for a vote. I think being a 21-year resident here, raising a family, I'm not sure who uses this park. I know I haven't, raising my boys. I think before the city would spend any of this money, they would need to survey the residents to see if that's how they want the money spent. Mayor Manzo addressed the Financial Advisory Committee, which I was a part of, and we did state that the city of Bel Air Beach is in an enviable financial position. But that's as we stay conservative and manage our expenses. As Councilmember Gaddis motion, we just told the residents we're going to raise $176,000 a year to help go to our stormwater management. I think that this extra expenditure is outside of the scope of where the city should be today. I think we should address the residents if this is an expenditure they want. I don't believe that's been addressed from a survey perspective. And I would encourage the council to vote no against this expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Van Scoy?
Good evening. The Parks and Recreation Board is asking the council to vote
Ms. Van Scoy, that's 3 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other residents?
I'm speaking as a parks chairman. I've been.
You gave the board report already.
No, this was their report.
I think we've all reviewed the report. I'm going to bring it back to council for last debated discussion. Anybody else? I have some questions on this thing. We just made a very elegant, very robust business decision with regard to stormwater. And to turn right around and invest in this park grant, I have to question some of those things. There are some really good elements of this park improvement and renovation. But what bothers me is having to take the whole enchilada at the cost of $200,000. I'm not quite sure. When we talk about a premier city, in my mind, the things that come above a park are things like street paving, valley curb repairs, street lighting, things like that. Those are things at the top of the priority list, and then you work your way down. And those things are very, very evident in the priorities and goals set forth in the strategic plan. There are still a lot of unanswered questions that have been asked repeatedly regarding this grant. One is the demographics of who uses that park. There's a lot of anecdotal. I hear it on both sides. Some families use it all the time. Some people have never used it. We have no numbers or statistics against it. It's just he said, she said, anecdotal. We don't have any numbers against that sort of thing. Another unanswered question, we have no idea of the recurring cost to maintain those improvements in the out years. Yes, we get grant money to offset the initial cost, but there's no follow-on money for maintaining those things. And the worst part of it is you are handcuffed to those improvements for 20 years, is it, City Manager? 20, okay, so we're handcuffed to those improvements for 25 years. So in other words, if we get an improvement and we don't like what it's costing us, I don't believe, I think there are provisions to go in and change that stuff, but I don't know what the approval rating for that sort of thing is. So in other words, you may be handcuffed to those improvements and recurring costs for a long time. Some of those things, I just don't understand where they came from. I don't understand if was this improvement the result of an RFP or was it an unsolicited proposal?
Just to clarify, I believe it was 3, maybe 4 years ago, they did a master plan. Maybe Pam was on there. Yeah, it was over $1 million, I know that. And we took the components, the major components of it, and kind of retweaked it. The park board at the time, about a year ago, went through it, looked at it, and said, okay, got cost estimates to do what was proposed in the grant. So it was a master plan for Bayside Park is what it started. Sorry about that. Through.
Yeah, I just have, I'm having a hard time with this concept of free money. We invest $200,000 and yet there are a lot of other priorities and infrastructure and improvements that we need to make rather than creating some attractive nuisances. And like I say, there are some good elements to this thing. The gazebo, I think, goes to creating revenue for this city. The tennis courts, I mean, we know that, but there are recurring costs there. We don't know what those recurring costs are. There are higher priority projects. This concept of creating access through the parking lot. Is that part of this grant?
No, it's not.
So in other words, just like Clearwater Beach, they create attractions all the time, and the last thing they think about is traffic congestion and traffic flow. So either we have to, out of our own pockets, create an alternative path for traffic, or you have to explain to the residents on 9th Street why the traffic flow just doubled. I just don't think we have any concept of what some of those unexpected consequences are in some of these issues. I'm against it. It just doesn't make sense at this point. I would rather go through that list and cherry pick some of the items that we can all agree on goes straight to our bottom line, and create revenue out of it, rather than get handcuffed to a 20-year investment with no idea what the recurring costs are. Any other comments?
Just kind of a reminder too, is $400,000 we spend first, and hope that they hold firm on the grant offer and reimburse us to the 200 that we fronted. Which is, there's always a risk there. I mean, they may not like what, they may say it didn't meet the plan, they ran out of money, they can't fund it. There could be many things that happen there, so that's another kind of perspective to think about when looking at this.
But no matter what, everyone needs to realize that there is no such thing as free money.
Absolutely.
Any other discussion? It's back to the mayor for the vote.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and thank you everyone for your comments. So the question before the council is to authorize the city manager to accept and proceed with the land and water conservation grant for Bayside Park. I think I heard Councilman Shirley say it's a $400,000 grant. That's correct. It's $200,000 and a $200,000 match. That's good. So there'll be some additional information. With that, I'll turn it over to the city clerk for calling the roll.
Councilmember Bean,
Aye.
Councilmember Gaddis, Councilmember Shirley,
Nay.
I'm sorry, I did not hear Councilmember Gaddis.
Nay.
Councilmember Swope,
Nay.
I'm sorry, wait, Patty, one more. I have Councilmember Bean with aye, Councilmember Gaddis, nay, and I think we're on Councilmember Shirley now.
right, Councilmember Shirley voted nay,
Okay?
Councilmember Swope voted nay, Councilmember Aki,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Nay.
Mayor Manta.
Aye. So the motion fails, 4-3. So the city manager, you will please decline the grant, and we will move forward without that grant. Thank you. Just let them know whatever you have to let them know on behalf of the city, and thank you and your team for all your efforts, and along with the park board for all their efforts and all the input from everyone. So thank you. We'll move to item 19, unfinished business. I don't know if we have any. Again, I think because I'm not there, it's easier if I turn it over to Vice Mayor Gunn. If you can just poll the council to see if there's any unfinished business. I have none, so if you could, it's up to you if you have anything.
Any unfinished business? I'll turn it over to the council. Shirley?
No.
Yes. Dean? Vice Mayor has none. That closes unfinished business, and back to you, Mayor, for the city attorney.
Okay, thank you. Fred Riley, would you like to have anything you'd like to speak of?
No report this evening.
Thank you. City Manager Reeves?
Just to give the council update on the petition drive for the undergrounding for 22nd Street extension. We got 60 plus back. I spoke to Chris Rowe. We had a meeting before the meeting tonight. We can go ahead and move forward. He's going to send me a letter. So we'll get it due tomorrow and start that process. We got our taxable values for next year today. and I will be sending that out. The taxable values increased about 5% for citywide, from 566 to 566 million to 594 million. And I guess the one thing we need to resolve is we have a work session on the 15th, which is the third Monday.
We're gonna look at the calendars. 15th, I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's the third Monday's the 15th, which we normally have along. Up to the council. And I'll need your work session items.
It's fine for me.
I think it's fine for me as well. I think we should stick with the same schedule. That way we can all make a plan.
You good for the 15th?
We're discussing work session dates, and the mayor cannot hear.
Mr. Gads, you all board for the 15th? Monday?
15th, yes, I'm good.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Vice Mayor's on board, Monday the 15th.
15th, that's fine.
Is it go? Put it on the calendar. Monday the 15th, 6, is that normal
Yeah.
time?
Normal time, and we'll ask you to send in your, anything you want to put on the agenda.
Probably do around the 10th or 11th.
Let's see.
You just put out the email on it.
We'll send the email out Friday to have it in by Tuesday of the next week. What is that, 10? I may be off of that.
What else do you have?
That's it for tonight.
It's your elected city attorney.
Thank you, city
Be
clerk.
elected to
I have nothing.
Okay, council comments, we'll start with Robin Hockey.
I have nothing to say. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Mark Bean.
Not tonight, thank you.
Thank you, Dave Gaddis.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you, Jody Shirley.
I have one question, I think this is for Lynn. I noticed that there were like 40 ordinance violations or something that was on the police report, but we don't have those in the book.
Yeah, if you look under, you should have the code enforcement list under item 21,
That's the financials.
right behind it is the code enforcement.
You guys are hiding it back there.
Well, what we started doing is put them under my item, so it's in the packet that way. So you see, we've done that the last few months, so, yeah, you put.
Yeah, I've seen them in the past, and I kept looking and looking, I couldn't find it. So that was my, I think, only question, and just, hey, thanks, good job on that stormwater fee and moving that along. Thank you very much. I think that's would really be helpful when it comes to budget, for us to review the budget. And so that's all great stuff.
Start that modification.
Perfect. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Swope.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment and thank a lot of people in this community because we've received a lot of emails, calls, and people inquiring, which is good. It shows the community's getting involved and they want to communicate with us. And I was just very impressed that we received so many ways of communications in these emails this time. Very impressed. Thank you. Keep it up.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor.
Just kudos to Jody Shirley on the stormwater. That's kind of your legacy. You kept your foot in our back, and kudos to you for keeping up the momentum on this thing. City manager, great job managing that and coordinating with Chris Rowe and Stan Tech. Great business decision. I'm really happy with how this is turning out. So that's all I have. Great work. Thank you very much for your time. Back to the mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and I'll keep it very brief. Vice Mayor, thank you very much for co-chairing this. I think it worked fairly well given the circumstances. As Fred Ronnie likes to say, it's not a perfect solution, but I think it did work. The only comments I have actually are follow-up from our meetings, and I think it bears repeating, but I did get another citizen complaint about motorcycle racing, high-speed racing going up and down Bell Boulevard. We witnessed
So moved.
Second.
Second.